Hi, it's James Harrison here to talk about the next Daily Drumming Influences Revisited. Today is a drummer out of the Western Kentucky area. Many of you won't know who he is. For people who grew up in that area, you're going to know him as Scott Kaufman. On Facebook, he's known as David Scott Kaufman. Scott was somebody I met. I think he was from Heath, just outside of Paducah, Kentucky. But I met him in college at Murray State University. And Scott, a little short guy. Pretty quiet at the time. I came in to Murray State from Murray High School, local school, and I had a 4-year full ride scholarship at Murray State that I auditioned for. My background was primarily drum set, rudimental, and marching. Very limited on melodic percussion at that time. And I'm not sure what Scott's background was. It might have been very similar, except not the marching part. But he was, I think, at least a year older, maybe 2 years older than me at Murray State. And percussion instructor there was Tom Van Arsdale, and he had a pretty strong program. I want to say when I first got there probably was 20 plus. I don't think we're all majors, but 20 plus people in the percussion ensemble. Because I remember playing ionization when I was first there. But anyway, through the association of being a percussion major, I got to be semi-close with Scott. We didn't really hang out or anything, but I didn't know a lot of what his background was, but I knew that he played drum set a little bit. And back in that time, Murray State had this old fine arts building that had an old recital hall. And up on the second floor of that, around the top of it, there were practice rooms that you could sign out, and you could lock the doors. They could be your practice room. And I had one with the drum set in there. And I had, at the time, I had gone from this Premier kit that was a 24, 14-inch tom, 16, 18, and I added some toms to it. That I bought the shells and finished it to match and whatnot, and was really tuned the drums up a little bit higher than what some would know, because I knew I had an 18, so I could get as low as I needed. So I went 10, 12, 14, 16, 18. And because of the way that I was into marching a lot, I would do a lot of rudimental stuff on the drums. And Scott would pop in now and then. We'd talk about things. And Scott seemed to me like when I saw him, it was a pretty small setup. Might have only been one rack and one floor, but everything was really low and really, I don't want to say muted, but really kind of dead sounding. Where mine were kind of tuned a little bit higher. And over time, you know, we always made jokes and stuff like that as the percussionists hung out and everything. And again, I didn't really hang out with Scott except for percussion stuff. And then toward, I guess, would be his senior year, he did a transcription of Rod Morgan's Stephen and Dixie Dregs. I'm drawing a blank on what it was. Was it Night Meets Light? I can't remember. But they performed it on his senior recital. And it was really, really cool. And we always tried to go to the other percussionist recitals to support him and whatnot. And I hadn't really seen Scott play a lot of drum set prior to that. I don't remember him auditioning for the jazz bands or anything like that. I auditioned for my first semester there. I auditioned for bands, and I was in a combo. I did not audition for the big band because I was also playing with a band called Splitwater Creek, which was very popular, and I knew that I had to be gone on a lot of weekends. The combos you could arrange to do things easily, but the big band had specific things, and it was going to be a conflict. So I didn't audition for the big band, just combos. I don't remember Scott being a part of that, but he could have been one of the combos. And I know I'm getting off track here, but as we go along, again, his senior recital, he's playing drum set, and then there was a band in the Paducah area. I just remember the name Joe Stanley, uh, but I can't remember the other person's name. Anyway, one of those guys became a guitarist or a backup for Dan Seals, and they were going to have an audition. So I went to Paducah and auditioned for them, and that's what I was running. I think the name Gary for some reason, but anyway, auditioned, and this they had you play like a 2-beat and 4 on the floor, country rock, and all that kind of stuff. And I was still in college, and they said, "So if you get this gig, what will you do with college?" And I said, "Well, I'll leave. You know, I can always go back to college and everything." But they asked me my whole situation. I told them I was on scholarship, blah blah blah. I said, "Okay, thanks a lot. We'll let you know." I didn't know Scott had auditioned for the same gig. Well, Scott got the gig because he was just graduating or just leaving. And I'm not saying he got it for that reason. I'm saying that they had asked me, they had mentioned that they didn't think it was a good idea for me to leave college if I was going to be almost finished. But anyway, Scott probably just won the audition. But anyway, he was because Scott plays rock solid. It's not fancy, it's just solid. But anyway, he became the drummer, backup drummer, or whatever you want to call it, for Dan Seals, who kind of started taking off and did really well for a while. So Scott was gone and on the road and played for Dan for a long time. I remember him coming back a few times and just talking about the life, if you want to call it that, of being a traveling musician and the pressures. I don't know if Dan Seals was headlining or doing opening acts and then moved up to headlining or whatnot, but he talked about the pressures of having to be on time, in time, you want to call it that, like perfectly in time with a click, which at that time would have been a new concept. Being able to repeat yourself night after night, and of course you're dealing with leaders and their emotions and all that kind of stuff, and you're just trying to get the job done and everything. But I know he did it for several years, and I think after he was out of Dan Seals, I don't know how or why, that he was drumming for some other things in Nashville. Then my understanding was he just got out of music altogether, went back to school to study something else, geology or something like that. He was, obviously a smart guy. But through Facebook, we got back in touch again. When I was doing these influences, I really started thinking about the fact that Scott had been an influence on me. I just really didn't understand it initially. I didn't understand it as an influence. But I know that a lot of what he did was just right there, and he played exactly what the music needed. And again, it wasn't fancy, it wasn't difficult, but it was rock solid. And that's what a lot of people were looking for. And my marching background, sometimes I played a little bit more than I needed to, or maybe didn't have the musical maturity sometimes back then. And probably played on top of the beat instead of playing behind the beat back then. All that kind of stuff. And so Scott educated me through osmosis, or just hanging around or talking to him. He instilled some great knowledge on me. So now these days, we all keep in touch with each other via Facebook. When I originally posted this in 2012, Scott wrote me a great thank you and a response. And if that pops up in my memories, I'll share it again. But I know I think he lives in Tennessee now, and I'm not sure what he does, but I do know he's had some health problems recently, and I wish him the best. And I've connected with his wife on social media to communicate to Scott and Chris, and she seems great. And she's mentioned that she had friended me on Facebook, and Scott was happy about that. I'm not sure Scott's ability to communicate right now, but I wish him the best. He's certainly an influence on my life, and one of the best people I've ever met. Kind, just a really kind person. And so Thank you, Chris, for friending me and communicating with Scott. And Scott, you were definitely an influence on my life, and a rock solid drummer that taught me a lot. So, the drumming influence for the day is Scott Kaufman on Facebook, David Scott Kaufman. I wish you the best and healthy recovery.